Depression Baby. Stories about growing up in Appalachia and other things too. With my dad, Ray B. Rogers.
On August 16th, 1929, I came into this world kicking and screaming. I reckon that made me a Depression Baby.
Depression Baby is a World Songs media production. Brought to you by Depression Baby the book, available in Kindle, paperback, and hardcover, and soon audiobook at raybrogers.com. Today, Ray explains something that's probably a little bit of a mystery to most city folk.
Did you ever wonder why the old barns in the countryside have a big door about 10 feet off the ground, seemingly leading to nowhere? Actually, the big door leads to a hayloft, which stores hay feed for the cattle and horses in the stalls below. Hay technology is different today than it was back in the 1930s when I visited my granddad Roger's farm. Farmers now store hay in huge rolls or bales that need a tractor with a pole loader to move them. Before the rolls, the bales were rectangular and could be moved and stacked by anyone with a fairly strong back. My granddad, John Rogers, started the haying process by sowing alfalfa and crimson clover seeds in what may have been a cornfield or maybe a wheat field. These hay crops replenished the nitrogen in the soil so that the field could be rotated back to corn or wheat again. The knowledgeable farmers knew how to get the most out of the soil in those days, when the farmer did not purchase oil-based fertilizers. The fertilizer came from the stalls where the cattle and horses stayed when it was cold outside. This was recycling before environmentalists had even defined the word. Experience had given these hard-working men of the soil knowledge not yet stored in books or computers. Granddad Rogers, or maybe Uncle John, would start the process of harvesting the hay by dropping the sickle on the horse-drawn mower pulled by Kit and Kate, the well-matched Percher and mares. The hay had to dry in the sun for a day or two before it was raked up into rows. Kit and Kate were then hitched to the hay wagon, and then the fun began. Men on each side of the wagon would load their pitchfork with hay and throw the hay up to the man on the wagon. The man on the wagon would properly place each forkload to balance the load, so that the wagon would not turn over. Uncle Jack seemed to have this skill. My brother Mark, who was really strong when he was young, he could even walk on his hands, was forking hay one hot day when a grasshopper hopped out of the hay into his mouth and down his throat. This is a true story. Mark survived and lived to tell how the grasshopper kicked and scratched all the way down. Whenever the hay wagon was loaded to the maximum, we headed for the barn. Now we solve the mystery of the door leading to nowhere. The wagon pulls up beside the barn, the doors to nowhere are opened, and the hay is thrown into the barn loft. The cattle and horses will be fed. Children can jump and play on the soft piles of hay, and even lovers might have a romp in the hay. And now you know the rest of the story, and why there is that big door leading to nowhere.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Depression Baby. And if you did, my dad has one important request. If this podcast brought a little smile to your day, would you please consider right now subscribing for free to the podcast and kindly leaving a nice 5-star rating and review on iTunes. You can make the difference in getting Depression Baby in front of a wider audience and help preserve this disappearing legacy. If you need any help with how to subscribe to the podcast, just go to raybrodgers.com and look for the podcast tab on the main menu. Thanks to our audio and musical contributors, including our friend Lobo Loco. You can find out more about him and all the rest of the music and audio in the show notes at, you guessed it, raybrodgers.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Depression Baby Podcast.